to SDN Tech Forum. This is AWS Crash Course. In earlier video, you have seen us talking about load balancers, AWS load balancers. Now we will talk about AWS Auto Scaling. So why split that into two? Because most of the time, whenever you're using auto scaling, you're actually interacting with load balancers because they are not, you know, mm, dip, come tightly coupled. They are they can be mutually exclusive, so you can use just one of them. Hence I decided to split it in two and talk about in two separate topics. So let's see what is AWS auto scaling. So what is in agenda? Introduction to AWS scaling, auto scaling groups, component of auto scaling groups, its interaction with load balancers, benefit of AWS Auto Scaling Group, best practices, and finally the conclusion. Obviously, after this talk, we will get into a demo where we will build a auto scaling solution which will be interacting uh, with a load balancer and give us the scalability feature of cloud computing. All right, so what is the type of scaling? This is irrespective of any cloud behavior, right? In general networking concept. So there are two type of scaling. One is vertical and another is horizontal scaling. Vertical scaling, as the picture depicts on the left side, you have a smaller instance, and for some reason, say your application has grown, you have more incoming traffic, and or maybe your website traffic is increasing, so you are unable to handle the load and you want something bigger to uh, to increase your performance. In that case, vertical scaling is something that is replacing a small instance with a larger instance. Say you started your application in AWS terminology. If you started with T2 medium, but your application become really popular and you want to scale, in that case, you can use say Excel EC2 instance and run your application on top of it. Versus there is another concept called horizontal scaling. Horizontal scaling, as you can see, you have one EC2 instance or n number of EC2 instance on one side when you started, and when your application is requiring a performance or hitting some performance roadblocks, you would like to add more number of instances but of the similar size. So you say, for example, you started with one EC2 T2 medium, and when your application become really popular, what you can do, you can add more instances of EC2 medium and serve your application from a group of servers, right? So what are the benefit? The benefit is obviously for vertical scaling. As you can see, you have single point of failure. That means when you started, you had one instance, smaller instance. If that goes down, your application is impacted. Versus the large instance, again single point of failure. Also, this smaller instance to large instance switching requires some kind of downtime. So you need to shut down the older appliance and power up the other one. Versus horizontal auto scaling, which is really adding more servers. That means there is no downtime involved. And also, if one of the server goes down, you have others available to support your application request. That means you have better fault tolerance or availability. But this is general scaling concept. You can use it. We use it all the time in networking domain. With cloud, scaling is very important, and most one of the popular feature of cloud is scaling, and cloud has adopted method of horizontal scaling. That means you add similar instances, more number of similar instances to your application. All right. So introduction to AWS Auto Scaling Group. What is ASG? And we will refer it as ASG, AWS Auto Scaling Groups, is a service provided by Amazon Web Services that allow user to automatically scale their compute resource based on demand. So it is not like a uh, any physical service or managed service. It's mostly a concept. So it is a concept, or it is a say workflow which allow you to scale your application based on demand. And what is this demand? This demand can be incoming request. This demand can be CPU performance. This demand can be how much memory read and write is happening. So demand differs from application to application. So this is essentially a workflow. So ASG make it easy to ensure that right number of instances are running to handle the load of your application. And this is dynamic. That means as your application performance uh, demands more, you can add uh, instances. Also, when there is off-peak hours, you can automatically take down some of the instances so that the cost is very well balanced. ASG work by monitoring the health of your instances and adjusting the number of instances in your group based on predefined rule. As I mentioned, ASG runs on a policy. So you define a policy, the policy, and obviously in within your policy you have some monitoring objectives. Whenever those monitoring triggers a threshold exceeds, so it triggers something and then the action happens. You will see when we get into demo, right? So what are the components of AWS Auto Scaling Group? Because it is a concept or workflow, AWS include launch configuration, auto scaling groups, scaling policy. These are the three main components. Launch configuration define the setting for new instances that are launched as part of auto scaling group. So adding a vanilla EC2 instance is no good. If you are running a web server or web service, say e-commerce store, you just don't want to add another EC2 instance which runs Ubuntu or any operating system of your choice. You want to make sure that it is actually running a fully functional application and ready to serve, right? So that's why the launch configuration is important. Within launch configuration, there are multiple settings which we enable, like what AMI to use, what user data or the script to load before we add this as a healthy instance to our auto scaling group. Auto scaling groups are collection of EC2 instances that are managed as a single unit. Scaling policy determine when and how to add or remove instances from the group based on demand, right? So dynamically you can add or remove based on demand. And as I mentioned, demand is uh, specific to kind of application you're running. It can be number of incoming queries, it can be a load, it can be CPU stress, etc. So we define that as a policy. Now, interaction with load balancers. ASG can be used in conjunction with ELB to distribute incoming traffic across multiple instances. That is the key concept of load balancer. That's what the load balancer does. But when used with ELB, ASG can automatically register new instances with load balancer and remove instances that are no longer healthy. So obviously for your application you want to use ELB, but when you combine them together, ASG get additional intelligence and it can automatically register new instances which are created as a part of uh, policy trigger and register them with ELB. By using ASG and ELV together, you can ensure that your application is always available even during periods of high demand. So now we have two uh, intelligent component joining forces, and it gives us very high availability. Benefit of auto scaling group, we have talked enough about that. Improve availability, increase scalability. Scalability is the key here. And reduce cost. Reduce cost, why? Because you can scale up your application, you can scale down your application based on demand. Additionally, ASG can help you save money by automatically scaling down your resources during period of low demand, reducing your overall infrastructure cost. Best practices using AWS ASG. It is important to follow best practices such as setting up appropriate alarms, notification, testing your scaling policy, and regularly reviewing your configuration to ensure that it is optimized. So notification is a key thing. You don't want to run blind. That means while you are sleeping, your AWS ASG triggers uh, tens or hundreds of instances for misconfiguration and any other thing. So you want to make sure that you have the right alarm set, right level of notification set, and also you can wrap this with cloud formation to manage your AWS ASG more intelligently. So we will talk about cloud formation in advanced videos, but you need to understand that there is a knob or higher level uh, thing available which can help you orchestrate these various ASGs. Conclusion: obviously, AWS Scaling Group is powerful tool for managing your compute resources in cloud. By automating the process of scaling your infrastructure based on demand, you can improve the availability and scalability of your application while reducing the cost. Right, and also these concepts can run very well with ELB, cloud formation, and make sure there is accuracy and any misconfigurations and other things are handled uh, by orchestration. So this is all about load balancers and ASG. Now we are ready to create one for our application. So far you have seen we have EC2 instance, we have storage attached to that, we have EFS attached to that. That's your file storage. And now we will have a dummy application running on this EC2 instances where we are going to front face it with ELB plus ASG. So stay tuned for that. Thank you very much.